Kingdom of Cain is already climbing the charts on Amazon. It's a bestseller in several categories, but we're not done yet. We want to blow the roof off this thing. This book explores some of the most pivotal murders in history, yes, actual murders, and reveals how these violent acts reshaped our culture, our stories, and even the way we think about good and evil. I'm going to sign copies of my new book, Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness. You should have already ordered it, but if you haven't, you can order a signed one from us, or you can order a new one if you've ordered another one. But I will also be taking your questions, so I'm going to sign and talk at the same time. Not everybody knows I can do this. Some people can only sign, some people can only talk, but I can sign and talk. I probably will be signing different names because while I'm talking, I'll probably forget mine. But the first question comes from Patrick Starr, 7-2. He says, "Oh, Captain, my Captain, how did you choose the three main topics for the book?" The book is about three murders that just occur again and again in the arts, in novels, in movies, in books of philosophy, just everywhere. They just captured the imagination. One of the murderer's hands was mummified and put in a museum. A famous poet wrote a poem about the hand. And so it was kind of easy to pick them because you just picked the ones that showed up again and again. And the only one that I hesitated on was Jack the Ripper. So I didn't put Jack the Ripper in there because I didn't feel that, I felt it was so, what's the word? It was almost so basic that it wasn't really saying anything, where all of these other murders spoke into the culture as it is now. So for instance, one of them is Ed Gein, who killed women and dug up their bodies and used their bodies to as clothes. He would dress up as the women in their skin, which some of you will recognize from Silence of the Lambs. That was based on it. Psycho, sometimes thought one of the greatest movies, American movies ever made, was based on that. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based on it. And therefore, the entire slasher genre comes out of that one murder. So it's pretty hard if you're doing a book about murders that have inspired art. It's pretty hard to leave that one out. And then the other one, there's one that's more obscure because it took place a long time ago, Lacenaire, who was a con man who killed a fellow con man and his mother. But that inspired Dostoevsky to write Crime and Punishment. And Crime and Punishment foresees the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, who said what was going to happen when people realized that God was dead, that the West was no longer a Christian culture, and kind of predicted a lot of the stuff that was going to happen. And Friedrich Nietzsche inspired a murder that was supposed to be the crime of the century. It was the Leopold and Loeb murder in the 1920s, where these two guys decided that they were Nietzschean supermen, and they were going to commit the perfect murder to prove that how superior they were to other people. And of course, they were almost immediately caught and arrested by a bunch of Chicago flatfoots who, with the normal kind of low IQ of Chicago police officers. And I shouldn't say that because I know some Chicago police officers, and I hope they're listening. But so that has inspired Hitchcock movies, a play, a movie called Rope that was based on the play. You may have seen Murder by Numbers with Sandra Bullock. That was based on that murder. One of the episodes of The Sinner was based on that. And so it speaks into the effect that Nietzsche had on the culture and whether what he was saying was true or not. And the other one, of course, is Cain and Abel. And that just is the murder. That's the first murder. It's the pattern of all murders. It's the pattern of all history. It's the first thing that happens after the fall of man. So it was pretty easy the murders kind of leapt out at me. I think it's why I sat down to write the book in the first place. Not the Admin says, Klavan, the book traces a series of murders and their effects on art and culture throughout time. I'm curious, were there any murders that got cut from the book? And if so, for what reason? Well, like I said, I didn't do, the two I would say that I didn't do were Jack the Ripper. And one of the things about Jack the Ripper is artists like it because it's girls being killed by a guy with a knife, which is obviously very symbolic and sexy. And in real life, of course, they were Victorian prostitutes who were like the lowest of the low. They were not like classy call girls. They were women without teeth and just the women who had no recourse but to sell themselves. And so it wasn't really that sexy. But obviously, artists like women being chased around by guys because it's exciting and kind of has a sexual flair to it. But I decided, the thing is, most murderers kill men. I think something like 85% of murder victims are men, and over 90% of murderers are men. And so I didn't think it was indicative of anything except the fact that guys like sexy girls running around screaming. I think that's basically what that's about. And the other one was lynching. And that, of course, has inspired numerous stories. But again, I didn't feel it was speaking as broadly. It was saying something about American history and about injustice, but it wasn't speaking as broadly into the heart of mankind as these murders do. And also these murders, because they address things like transgenderism, godlessness, and envy and suicide. I think they just speak into things that are happening now because of the loss of faith in the culture. So that spoke to me, and so that's what I wrote about. From Peter Gryffindor. Isn't that a school in Harry Potter? It's a school in Harry Potter. Peter from Gryffindor says, Master and Lord of the Multiverse, the book is fantastic, and I've been reading it nonstop since it arrived. My question today is, why do you think that so many great artists are bad people? In the book, you go into Dostoevsky's life outside of his writing, and I found this super interesting since I was not aware of his affair and his struggles with gambling. Yeah, and Dostoevsky was not a bad person. He was a very troubled person, and I think that, as I've written about myself, that writing, a sports writer once said, writing is easy, all you have to do is sit down and open a vein. And I think the thing about writing, especially writing fiction, is wounds that are allowed to heal in other people, you have to keep reopening. And it takes a lot of work to stay sane when you do that. I even write in The Kingdom of Cain about one book that I wrote that dragged me into a world of pornography and of sadistic pornography, stuff that made me ashamed of myself that I was looking at it, and almost stopped my career, because the book, it was Empire of Lies, and I think I'm really proud of that book. But I came home after I was done. I said, I'm never doing this again. I cannot put myself through this. I take a lot of effort to keep myself sane, to keep my spirit pure and good and happy and pointed toward God. And I think a lot of writers don't do that. Instead, they turn to alcohol. Almost every great American writer has been an alcoholic, almost everyone. And they think, oh, the alcohol is spurring my creativity. And then they're 50 and they're done. They're 50 and they're finished because they've burned their brains out with alcohol. So I didn't want to do that, and I've taken a lot of care. I've been crazy. I don't like it. I didn't like it. It wasn't fun. And I decided I wanted to be sane, so I put a lot of effort into it, but not everybody can do that. And I think that people who are damaged move toward the arts, and the arts keep you damaged. And so if you don't work at being sane, like I said, Dostoevsky was not a bad person. He was just a really troubled person. And ultimately, he found, in one of the greatest love stories in all of literature, he found a wife who took care of him and made his life a lot better. Clavinator 25 just picked up the book. I'm super excited to dive in. I saw you had a chapter on East of Eden, and I was curious about your thoughts on the works of John Steinbeck. I think East of Eden is his best work by far. I think East of Eden is his best work by far. I think that is absolutely true. I think that book alone makes him a great writer, because it's such a great book. And it's based on, the reason it's the chapter title is that's the chapter about Cain and Abel. And as you'll recall, Adam and Eve were chased out of Eden, and God put an angel with a flaming sword to keep them out to the east of Eden. And so that's why it's called that, and that's why the novel is called that. And it's not really about that novel, though it does go into it a little. Steinbeck is famous because, well, this is not the only reason he's famous, but the thing that sets him apart is he is a great writer for the working man. And you will find cab drivers and construction workers who've never read another novel, or certainly never another literary novel, who love John Steinbeck. He had a heart for the people, and he communicated for the people, and he communicated greatly for the people, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think that his, if you've never read of Mice and Men, it's only 100 pages long, and it'll break your heart and it will make you cry. It's a beautiful book. And Grapes of Wrath, I like a lot. It's not, he was kind of a socialist, and it's not my favorite of his books, but it still is a terrific novel. But he never touched East of Eden. It's just great. So here's a guy whose name is Ben Shapiro, destroyed my marriage with facts and logic. That's his name. I think you can actually sue him for that, and I will give you his address, and you can send the papers there. Supreme Overlord of Reality. In the book, you bring up Alfred Hitchcock more than once. Both Rope and Psycho are discussed at length. Do you think he had a unique insight into morality, or do you think he was just an artist capturing the ideas of the time? Oh, both. He was a tormented Catholic. he made fun of his Catholicism, but he called for a priest on his deathbed, and his daughter was raised Catholic, and so that really plays into his work. And I write about very closely in Psycho some of the things you can learn that he's saying about God in the movie Psycho. And people don't think about this. They see a movie that's about, a girl in her underwear gets in the shower and she gets killed. It can't possibly have anything to do with theology, but it does. And Hitchcock makes very, very broad gestures toward the Bible in the movie, and I talk about all that in Kingdom of Cain. If I haven't mentioned, this book is called Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness. And you can find God in the works of Hitchcock again and again. And the thing that made him so special, obviously, was he was just such a great director. And because he focused on getting people to scream, everything he thought about was the camera angles and what techniques he wanted to use. And he and I have a very similar feeling about technology. Hitchcock complained about every new technology that came to the movies and then used it more creatively than anybody else. So he didn't like sound, he didn't like color, he didn't like any of the new things that came in while he was working, but he always used them, and he used them a lot of times better than anybody else. And if you watch Vertigo has a half an hour in it without any dialogue. He just thought, I can still make silent movies if I want to. And he really did capture, because he wrote about crime and murder, he really did capture something about the spirit of the age that he was in. And that's why I refer to him again and again in this book. And also, he's just one of the great directors of all time. Brika says, how do you keep things from getting stale or boring in marriage after so many years? My wife and I are like children with each other. I'm so crazy about her. I'm sure she's sitting there going, God, this guy, I hope he doesn't come home again tonight. But I'm just crazy about her. And I think that alone keeps things fresh. And I've always been a drifter. My wife is not, but I've always been a drifter. I drifted around the country for years, really hoboed around the country for years. And so I just decided, I'm not going to change the wife, I'm going to change the home. And so we move around, not as much as we used to, but we used to move like every few years. Now we've slowed down and we've probably found, a place that we like and we're going to stay. But that helps spruce things up. And it also helps that we have chapters in our life. We have the London chapter in our life and the California chapter in our life, the Los Angeles one and the Santa Barbara one and the New York one. And so that actually kind of gives our life a certain kind of glamour to ourselves that, we can remember which chapter we were in when something happened. But, there's nothing like being in love with your wife. There's nothing like being in love with your wife. It is a great, great blessing from God. And if it happens to you, you can't just take it for granted. You got to, that's where you have to pour your erotic energy instead of into things like, other women and porn and things like that. And I think that, erotic energy doesn't just mean sex. It means all your romance and all that. You've got to really train it on that. And as I've often said, my wife treats me like a king, which is just her clever way of getting me to worship the ground she walks on. And it worked. I fell for it. So I think that there's nothing I can teach you about that. That's just something that you have to find. You have to find the right person and make it happen. Michael Knowles Cigar Band. I'm glad he finally got an honest job. That's Klavan. I am really enjoying the new book, but I have to know: is there any word on the next Cameron Winter mystery? I love reading them every October, and I'm waiting with bated breath for the next in the series. It is called After That, the Dark. It will be out late October. You can pre-order it now, but you can't pre-order it now because you're too busy ordering Kingdom of Cain. But while you're there, it's right there on the same page. You can order that as well. I think it's the best in the series. My editor thinks I'll never beat Christmas because it was his idea that I write a Christmas book, so he's very invested in that. But I think this one is really spectacular. I'm very proud of it. It's one of the best mystery novels I ever wrote, and yes, it will be out in late October. The Kingdom of Cain is already climbing the charts on Amazon. It's a bestseller in several categories, but we're not done yet. We want to blow the roof off this thing. This book explores some of the most pivotal murders in history, yes, actual murders, and reveals how these violent acts reshaped our culture, our stories, and even the way we think about good and evil. From Crime and Punishment to Psycho to East of Eden, Kingdom of Cain isn't just true crime, it's a journey into the heart of the Western mind. If you've ever wondered how the West was really won, not just by swords and gold, but by ideas, this book is for you. Head over to Amazon right now, help us make history, shatter records, and yes, maybe even earn a few spiritual brownie points in the process. And if you're an audiobook person, I've got good news. I narrate it myself. That's right. You get the content and the Klavan voice in your ear. I can't think of a better way to cure the growing epidemic of Klavanlessness than by picking up this book. And if you want a signed copy, a relic for your bookshelf, head over to dailywire.com/shop and grab yours before they're gone. Matt Walsh's Flannel. Klavan, I'm really enjoying the new book. Oh, no, this is the same one. I misread the Michael Knowles cigar band. All right, that question was from Matt Walsh's Flannel. This one is from Mike Knowles' cigar band. It's got to be the same person, right? He's just stealing objects. That's like a fetish of some kind. Michael Knowles' cigar band says, Klavan, at the beginning of the book, you dedicate this to your family and quote a line from Keats. Do you see this as a seminal work for you? Yes. I mean, I think these three nonfiction books, The Great Good Thing, Truth and Beauty, and The Kingdom of Cain, are, and another book that I hope to get to write as well, are books that work out an idea about art and God, and the fact that any great art, any even good art, is going to speak to us about God. And the reason this is important is if you learn about literature in school today, no one will ever mention God. And yet you can't understand what most people are writing about, what most great artists are writing about. You cannot understand unless you understand where God is in the culture when they're writing. So if they're writing in a time of faith, that's going to be one kind of work. If they're writing in a time of religious upheaval, that will be another. And then the most important thing that's been happening over the last 500 years is the seeping of faith out of our society, out of our culture. And since God is real, that's the seeping of a sense of reality out of our culture. It means that our culture has been slowly going insane. And so every book, every work of art, there's writing about painting in this as well, and about philosophy, and everything is telling you something, because Joyce said that the arts are the conscience of the race. And in a world where our conscience is getting out of whack because we've lost touch with the core of all reality and the personality of all reality and the creator of all reality, everything is going to speak about that in some way. And that's why I write about murder, because murder is a dysfunction, murder is evil. And I think that it speaks directly to it. And a lot of Christians think like, oh, well, you shouldn't write about that. That's dark. You know, if you're writing about God, you should only write about happy things and things going well and, you know, comforting things. But no, it's in the evil that you start to see where our relationship has gone wrong. And it's not an accident that a murderer predicted this transgender fad, you know, in the 1950s. That's not an accident. I think the fact that he was involved in evil and that has become this pit of evil in our culture, those things are related. And that's the thing that this book is about, the way in which the arts reflect, the way in which the arts reflect our relationship with God, even if it's bad. But even if it's bad, it also illuminates things about our relationship with God that actually lead us to something better than what we're in at the moment. Reagan era 84, Lord of all that is good. Not all that is good, some of what's good, I think. Do you think the intelligentsia are coming around to the idea of God? In the book, you talk about how post-World War II, many of them rejected God outright. Do you see this changing? I do. I think that we are in some kind of a hinge moment, but I'm not sure which way it's going to go. I don't think you can be sure which way it's going to go. I think a lot of people are returning to the idea of the underpinning of being, that something is there beyond just what we see, which is an idea that went out of fashion, you know, as recently as 10 years ago. I think that was kind of the peak idea among intellectuals, and the new atheists were a big deal. And now they've kind of shot their wad and nobody really cares about them anymore because nothing they said makes sense. You know, Richard Dawkins very bright man. Nothing he said actually held together. I was always furious when he was interviewed because no one ever asked him the questions that I would have asked him that I think would have exposed the fact that he didn't make any sense. And so I think that is changing, but whether it'll change toward paganism and evil forms of spirituality, because not all spirituality is good, I don't know. I'm hoping it will mean a return to Christianity. And right now, I think a lot of men are returning to the Catholic Church. And as I always say, the future is always male. What men do will be what people do ultimately. And so I think this is a good sign. And I really like, how old are you? Oh my God. I was about to say, I really like this 20-year and 25-year-old, but not all of them. I'd say, I think I really do like this Generation Z. I think they have something new, and they are, we've had a couple of generations that were so ruined by feminism that they're not even reproducing. And I think I see in this new generation, people shrugging that off, which I think is great. And that'll having children will bring you back to God in a big hurry. I can't quite read this. L. Fector, 1682. Do you have an opinion on Lonesome Dove? I've been reading it recently. I think it's brilliant. I don't even think the guy, McMurtry, I think he's a good writer, but I don't think he's a great writer. But I think that's a great book. I've read a lot of his books. I mean, when I say a lot, he's written so many. I've read about 5 or 6 of his books. And HUD is the one, which is really called Horsemen Pass By, is quite good. But nothing he did is like that book. That book is just, it's a great American novel. He wrote a great American novel. And like I said, I don't think he is a great writer per se in the way that like a Dostoevsky or a Dickens or somebody is, where he produces one after another. But there are plenty of writers who have written one great book, like the Bronte sisters. Each one wrote a great book. I think that's his great book, but I think it's magnificent. I think it is just, it's just terrific. It's been great talking to you. I always love talking to you. I always like hearing what's on your mind, and I appreciate your writing in. And I will see you again for the Andrew Klavan Show. Be there. For more magnificent Klavan-y magnificence, like and subscribe. And for even more magnificence, subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Show wherever you get your podcasts.